Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. And at the end of another week, and the end of another poll, we've got a winner with the Babylon 5, The Coming of Shadows, a sourcebook for the second year of the TV series. Now we'll have a look at that on the desktop in a wee second, and as usual I'll be back at the end of the video with some other poll related stuff and some other channel related stuff. But just a wee reminder that if you'd like to help the channel out, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, then there's a Patreon in the description down below. So if you have a look at that, you can help the channel out and it'd be very much appreciated. But let's have a look at The Coming of Shadows. So, this is The Coming of Shadows, a sourcebook for the Babylon 5 role-playing game by Mongoose Publishing, and it came out in 2003. Now it's for the first Babylon 5 role-playing game by Mongoose under the D20 system rather than the OGL. Although obviously, since they're basically compatible, you could probably use this with the later version as well. Now, in the past, I've made some negative comments about Mongoose Publishing, and I've been called up on them in the comments. And I'd like to clarify that. Now, this is a personal bias that I didn't like the way they were bringing out so many role-playing games. Between 2002 and about 2008, they had the Lone Wolf role-playing game, which they published for 2 years and then dropped. They did 3 different versions of the Babylon 5 role-playing game. They did the D20 one, they did the OGL one, and then they did one based on their Traveller rule set. I believe they had a Judge Dredd role-playing game as well, which came out in multiple editions. They just seem to be bringing out new editions of role-playing games to get that initial sale of a rulebook. You know, we've got a lot of complaints in the community at the moment about Wizards of the Coast bringing out a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons after 10 years. But the fact that in 6 years of Babylon 5 role-playing games they brought out 3 different versions bothers me more. However, I will hold my hands up and say that what they did do was absolutely fantastic. This sourcebook, for example, as we look, is absolutely gorgeous. Now, what this is attempting to do, if you've seen my video on the Babylon 5 role-playing game, the D20 one, it details the first season of the TV show, so drops you in at the start of it, and includes the characters and an episode-by-episode breakdown. And what these sourcebooks did was add to that by detailing each season one by one. So there's this sourcebook for the second season, there's one for the third, fourth, fifth, etc. I don't know if there was one for the television movies. I possibly have it because these books were gifted to me, so I'm not that familiar with what I've got sitting on a shelf over there. But they broke these episodes down and went into them in minute detail. Absolute fantastic resource for role-playing and beautifully illustrated. But let's have a look at the back cover first of all. The Coming of Shadows. The Babylon Project was Outlast. The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace, a self-contained world 5 miles long, located in neutral territory, a place for commerce and diplomacy for 250,000 humans and aliens, a shining beacon in space, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the third age of mankind, the year the Great War came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations. The year is 2259. The name of the place is Babylon 5. Featuring the space station that changed the destiny of an entire galaxy, this all-new role-playing game allows players to take the role of characters on board the Babylon 5 station and travel to the many stars and planets seen in the award-winning television series. From lowly lurkers and smugglers through to brave Earth Force officers and members of the Minbari warrior caste, a whole galaxy awaits to be explored. Inside you will find personalities, complete guide on creating characters for use in the game, from disgruntled dock workers to small-time smugglers, to the brave Earth Force personnel who have sworn to place themselves in harm's way. The galaxy of 2259, the entire second season of Babylon 5, is detailed within the supplement, with a timeline of events as well as covering all major characters and conflicts that took place in 2259. Rules additions, full rules for engaging in combat and contained within, allowing a character to face an enemy with his fists, a PPG or even a Star Fury superiority fighter. Equipment and vehicles, covering everything from the simple ground cards to the immense star freighters that ply the stars and Minbari war cruisers. Players are introduced to all vehicles present within the galaxy. Now, first of all, the proofreading on that was terrible. The mistake there, the gap in fists, For the back cover of a professionally published book, that is pretty bad. I make typos on my website all the time, but I'm just an idiot on the internet, whereas they're charging money for this. But also the fact that this first huge chunk is basically the description of the role-playing game, not of the source book. Okay, we've got the second season title speech, but this doesn't really allow you to create all these characters. There's a few classes within. Anyway, inside, we've got an advert for the Earth Alliance fact book. And it is all colour throughout. It really is a gorgeous looking book. The desktop publishing quality of the early 2000s was fantastic. This is still very clear to read, with the Babylon 5 logo faded into the background, but we've got loads and loads of colour images. It really is a joy to browse through. So we start off and we're straight into the personalities. So we've got Captain John Sheridan, Susan Ivanova, Michael Garibaldi. The sad thing, of course, looking through any Babylon 5 sourcebook, is the amount of people who have been lost, because obviously the actor behind Michael Garibaldi has passed away. The actor behind Stephen Franklin here has passed away. Talia Winters is still with us. Warren Keffer, as far as I know, is still with us. Alita Alexander, I follow her on Facebook. She is an absolutely fantastic person to follow. Very, very funny. Ambassador Delenn, of course, she was taken from us. Ambassador Jakar passed away as well. Kosh Naranek, Londo Malari, Natoth, Lania, Viakoto, unfortunately passed away. Alfred Bester, Mr. Morden, and Zach Allen, who has also passed away. So many of the cast has gone, but they're all detailed here, giving us backgrounds. There's a few sample characters which fit into the narrative, but we've got all their stats. One of the things I find slightly odd is how low level these are. You know, Zach Allen, who becomes head of security on the station in a later season, is only 4th level here. Alfred Bester is admittedly 16th level, so a much more powerful character. But, you know, Londo Malari, a character towards the end of his life, an ambassador for one of the major empires, is only 9th level total, 8th level diplomat, 1st level officer. They do seem very low levels for powerful characters that shape the galaxy. Then we've got the Galaxy of 2259, and it goes through each episode. We've got points of departure, the first episode, the one where Sheridan joins the cast, and it details everything that goes on. There's a detailed write-up of every single episode in here. I notice another misspelling of Lania there. The proofreading does seem to have been bad. Details what's happened to characters in between, what's not really told within the episode. And then we've got scenarios and campaign hooks. Now, some of these are fantastic, where it's giving you ideas of what your players could do. Some of them are just very, very basic. You can make the lives of any players with Minbari warrior caste characters very difficult by using the Trigati as a hook. This is a lost battleship which has been hiding out since the end of the Earth-Minbari War. But some of these are very lacking. I'm not sure I'll find it, but on my read-through there was one suggestion which was so trivial. Let's see if we can find it. Anyway, second episode, Revelations. It gives you the date, detailed backup, write-up, and colour plates from throughout it, detailing the vital parts of it. So the Icarus, the Bakujuquan, detailing parts of the non-background there, scenarios and campaign hooks. You know, Jakar's mission to the Rim holds some exciting possibilities for players if they're away from Babylon 5. Games masters may be tempted to base in scenarios on Zahadum at this stage of the campaigns. Don't. If characters had any dealing with Jack or one of his cronies, they may become concerned when they hear of his arrest and interrogation by Garibaldi. While few Minbari were aware of the transformation Delenn underwent until she actually revealed herself, those that had some inkling, had a tendency not to agree with her unilateral decision. So we're getting a bit of politics in here, but there's no real scenarios here. There's just some ideas which you can jazz up what you're doing. Got geometry of shadows, again detailing the episode, some pictures. They are a little dark. Then we've got the Drazi leadership contest, the techno mages, and again a bunch of ideas. Now I do like this concept, even if it is a bit lackluster, but the fact that you can set your campaign in a year, read up what's happening each date, and there's hooks in here to make your players aware that they're playing in the same universe as the television. They're playing parallel to it. It's a very good way of doing it. A distant star, lots of text in that one, not many pictures, with hooks, scenarios and campaign hooks, including a very large one which is cool here because that episode's about a starship getting lost in hyperspace, and it really brings out some ideas about that. Gives you ideas that a campaign could be built around exploration ships. The Long Dark, we're into February of the year. Again, the Bright Up, Missionary Licenses, Soldier of Darkness, the creature stats for what happens during that episode, and then we've got scenarios and campaign hooks. Spider in the Web. Again, the Write Up, plus some highlights from it, detailing stuff out, giving stats and benefits of templates if you want to be part of it. Scenarios and campaign hooks. A Race Through Dark Places. Going on to a lot of details about the Psi Core here. Very nice stuff. But Soulmates. Centauri Rite of Ascension. Tricks of the Non-Resistance. The Coming of Shadows. Detailing the Centauri Emperor's visit to the planet. Lots of background information there, but we're also introduced to Lord Reefer, one of the antagonists of the TV series for a while. A Gropos, about the military, so there's a lot in here about the Gropos themselves, the Bethesda Dome, the height of medical research, an eye on history. We've got scenarios and campaign hooks, All Alone in the Night. As I said, I'm going to start flicking through these very quickly. But we've got things like the Strebe Race dropped into the episode which features them. Acts of Sacrifice. The Lumati, another race to add to it. Hunter Prey. So these really do detail out the episodes, drop in any stats for anything, new races introduced, new weapons, ships are all in here. New classes are also dropped in slightly. Now for a word. I do like the fact that this subliminal message, the Psi Core is your friend, trust the core, was dropped into the episode, which caused a bit of outrage because that's illegal on British television, so they wanted to cut it out, but it got broadcast nevertheless. So there's a bit of a problem with that, but the fact they've actually just done the freeze frame and included it there. There are all the honor lies. Just going to keep flicking through. Knives. In the Shadow of Zahadum, where Sheridan interrogates Morden and is warned away from it. Confessions and Lamentations, where an entire species basically dies. Divided Loyalties, where they discover one of the crew is a traitor. The Long Twilight Struggle, the end of the Centauri Narn War, one of my favourite episodes of the series. I rewatch it quite often because there's just this amazing speech. Feels very valid these days in the current events in Europe. Comes the Inquisitor, which I didn't actually like that much. An episode where it turns out that Jack the Ripper is an agent of one of the alien species and has been kept alive. Meh. and The Fall of Night, the final episode, because each season covers a year chronologically. So 21st of December, we're virtually at the end of the year, where the Vorlon reveals what they really look like to be angelic beings. And it mentions the repercussions of that and how that can be read in. The previous episode is the one where it was such minor plot hooks and scenarios, where a starship is destroyed outside the station. And it mentions one of the plot hooks is that the wreckage is outside the station, so if you work in the docking ports, you might be very busy in clearing that wreckage, but shipping will be off. And that's the entire hook that it gives you, basically. Not overly impressive. Then we've got rules additions. So critically injured characters and treating them, various medical specialities, memory vaulting, a new psychor technique for hiding memories away. We've got prestige classes, Sagroplos hover pilots, Earth Force intelligence agents, Centauran Royal Guards, got Technomages, which I really like, Imperial telepaths. We've got some extra feats, and for the back cover telling us that all the starships are detailed, you're noticing there's not very much of the book left, and we're coming on to equipment and vehicles, spacecraft and conventional vehicles. They are just very briefly covered. You know, the exploration vessel, this giant ship, is just dealt with very briefly here. We've got, what, a paragraph on it, and then a couple of paragraphs of stats. This ship, which you could set your campaign on, it's as big as Babylon 5 itself. It's a massive vessel which is supposed to be out in space for years and years. You could base your entire campaign on one of these as they explore the galaxy, but that's all you get. But we've got the different things here: the Jaquan heavy cruisers for the Narn, Primus battle cruisers for the Centauri, Vorton warships, Valkyrie military assault shuttles, Omega heavy destroyers, Lightning shuttles, some stuff on vehicle technology like tractor beams, energy mines, and mass drivers. Then, because this is a D20 product, we've got a page with the Open Gaming License and D20 System License, which must be published. And then we've got an advert here for Signs and Portents, the in-house magazine of Mongoose Publishing, which, as far as I know, did some absolutely fantastic stuff. There were some really amazing people connected with that magazine. It really extended the game, to my knowledge, from what I saw, in amazing ways. And then we've got the speech from the very end of the series, the last moments of the final episode of Season 2. Ivanova gives a speech. And then we've got an advert for the Minbari Federation Factbook, which we've covered on the channel previously. So that was the Coming of Shadows for the Babylon 5 role-playing game, which won the poll with 26%, in one of the most interesting and exciting polls we've had for a while. Because from the first, it was going in odd directions. You see, when I upload these polls or add them to the YouTube, I then switch to my personal YouTube account to check that it looks all right. And I got distracted and took 5 minutes or so to check it out after I'd added it. And in those 5 minutes, there'd been 3 votes for Immortal the Invisible War. It had jumped out ahead on just the few votes which had been cast. And I was really excited. I didn't know there was any interest in that game, and I was like, oh, maybe there's a big audience waiting for Immortal the Invisible War content. And it's a game I've not really looked at. As I said in the last video when I was announcing this poll, these were all contributions, things I've been given by people when they were moving houses and things and they didn't have space for stuff. I took them in. So I was excited to be having a look at that. But it fell away behind. And then we had lots of votes coming in for the GURPS Ultratech, and I remembered GURPS content on the channel's really, really popular. And that dominated the poll for a while. And then, towards the midweek, towards the end of the week, we had Fading Suns D20 and The Coming of Shadows jumping out ahead. So I didn't know which way it was going to go. It had been a 4-way race as far as I was concerned, because these things were jumping in and out. But in the final results, The Coming of Shadows, as I said, that got 26%, Fading Suns D20 came in on 24%, just narrowly behind. GURPS Ultra Deck came in with 21%, again just a bit behind. Arcane Mysteries of Barsave for Earthdawn came in on 18, and Immortal the Invisible War came in on 11, so I don't know whether it really picked up any more votes at all across the week. There was just that initial surge. But anyway, as usual, that's that poll wiped out, and we've got new ones put in. And this week I'm going back to a retro adventure, so we've got 5 adventures. Now, I didn't want to put any Dungeons & Dragons ones in, because Dungeons & Dragons dominates the industry and dominates these polls. And because we did a Dungeons & Dragons one last time, along with a Call of Cthulhu, I decided not to put in Call of Cthulhu or Dungeons & Dragons content into the poll. So, I've put in Out in the Black for the Serenity role-playing game. Now, the Serenity role-playing game has some of my favourite rules out there. It's a really fascinating game, which does things in interesting ways. So, I haven't really read this adventure, but I hope it does things as interesting ways as the role-playing game does. We've got City of Angels for Twilight 2000. Now, I have a large amount of Twilight 2000 adventures, and with the popularity of the role-playing game having been re-released, I wonder if these adventures will be interesting to bulk up what Games Masters can run for that game. I've put up Scavenger Hunt for Star Wars. Well, there's always going to be Star Wars content in my polls, there's always going to be Shadowrun, because I have full shelves of each role-playing game. And Scavenger Hunt's one of the early role-playing adventures. It was when West End Games were on the top of their game. It's really fantastic stuff. And for Shadowrun, I've got Mercurial, the very first adventure that was ever published for Shadowrun, within the year that Shadowrun itself was published, way back in the 80s. So it'd be interesting to see how that holds up to modern eyes. And finally, I wanted a fantasy content, and I'd got this one in mind, the first part of the Enemy Within campaign, one of the finest role-playing campaigns ever written, Shadows of Bogenhafen. Now, I almost didn't put this in, because I couldn't find it. All my Enemy Within campaign, all my Warhammer stuff is up on the shelf here, together. And Shadows of Bogenhafen wasn't. And like some of my collection, which has just disappeared over the years, been lent out, been lost in house moves and things, I was worried that Shadows of Bogenhafen had been lost as well. But I eventually found it in amongst my Shadowrun stuff for some reason. So it's in the poll. I'd actually dug out a Star Trek adventure that I was going to put in instead, and there wasn't going to be a fantasy option. But there we've got fantasy option with Shadows over Bogenhafen for one-man fantasy roleplay. The start of an absolutely epic, amazing campaign, so I'd love to cover that as well. On other channel-related stuff, I'm looking into doing some playtesting of the new 1D&D rules, and inviting people in. Now, I'll be putting up a separate video about this, having a further look at those rules, and inviting people in, and we'll get together a Discord. I'll link to that, and we can have a play and a test of these rules and see what we think as a group. But, as I said, I'll deal with that in another video. That'll be Friday's video where I go further through those rules. Apart from that, not much. As I said, I was trying to get the Discord online, and I think I found a way of getting it worked, even if linking the channel directly to it doesn't work. But I think we can work by just putting it in the descriptions. Anyway, I think I've wittered on for quite long enough, as usual. So thank you very much for watching. But, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.